The late afternoon sun bled a fiery orange across the savanna, painting long skeletal shadows from the acacia trees onto the parched earth. The air, thick with dust and the smell of dry grass, still held the heavy, oppressive heat of the day. Jengo, in his late 20s, his face a canvas of sun-baked skin and faint, weathered lines around his sharp, observant eyes, moved with the quiet grace of someone intimately familiar with the land. His faded khaki shirt, cargo shorts, and sturdy leather sandals were practical, blending him seamlessly into the landscape. He wasn't searching for trouble, just tracing the path of a stray impala heard earlier, hoping to guide it away from the village's fragile livestock. But then, a dark, unmoving mass near the barely visible boundary caught his eye. A cold knot formed in his stomach. Lions rarely ventured this close during daylight, and never alone. As he cautiously approached, the knot tightened, twisting into a sick dread. It was a male. A magnificent beast, even in its current state. Its once proud mane, usually a regal halo, was matted with mud and streaks of drying blood. Its immense body lay sprawled across a dry dirt path, flank heaving with ragged, desperate breaths that whistled in the suffocating quiet. A low, guttural growl, more a wheeze than a roar, escaped its throat. Flies, an obscene buzzing cloud, orbited a dark wound in its shoulder. The metallic tang of blood, sickly sweet and profound, hung heavy in the air, overpowering the scent of dust and earth. Jengo knelt, his heart thudding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. His training, his instinct, streamed at him to back away, to report this to the elders immediately. A wounded lion, especially one this close to the village, was an unparalleled danger. The villagers lived with a constant, simmering fear of these apex predators, a fear born from the harsh realities of coexisting on the edge of the wild. Yet something held him. He gazed into the lion's golden eyes, glazed with pain, but still holding a flicker of primal dignity, and saw not a monster, but a king brought low, suffering deeply. He reached out a trembling hand, stopping inches from the matted fur. The wound was grotesque. Protruding from the muscle was an arrow, crude in its shaft, yet oddly distinct. It wasn't the clean, fletched arrow of a professional poacher, nor the rough-hewn spear of a desperate hunter. This was something else. As his gaze sharpened, he noticed it, a faint, almost imperceptible sheen along the shaft. Delicate, almost unnatural etchings snaked around the wood, glinting with what looked like a faint, bioluminescent residue, a sickly pale green against the dried blood. This wasn't just a poacher's wound. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Poachers sought quick kills, stealth, and valuable trophies. This arrow, with its peculiar markings and strange residue, hinted at something far more sinister. A deliberate, agonizing act of cruelty, or worse, an experiment. His mind raced, struggling to reconcile the brutality with the bizarre details. What kind of poison would leave such a trace? Who would craft such a weapon? The initial fear for his village quickly mingled with a chilling apprehension, a sense of a larger, darker threat stirring in the heart of the wilderness. His duty as a guide to protect both man and animal clashed violently with the inexplicable terror of what he was witnessing. This magnificent creature was not just dying, it was a victim of something unknown, something insidious. And Jengo found himself caught, inextricably, in its tragic, silent plea. The chill of his discovery battled with the searing heat of the late afternoon. Jengo, still kneeling, felt the weight of his village's fears settle heavily on him. He knew what he should do: retreat, alert Msi Baraka, and let the elder decide the lion's fate, likely a swift, grim end to protect the community. Yet the image of those pained, golden eyes, in the unnatural gleam of the arrow, held him captive. This wasn't just a wounded animal, it was a silent testament to a darker truth. He looked back towards the distant outline of the village. Already figures were emerging, drawn by the unusual silence where the lion's roar should have been, or perhaps by some unspoken instinct. Among them, prominent and unwavering, was Mzi Baraka, the village elder. Draped in traditional patterned cloth, his weathered, authoritative face was already set in a stern line, his eyes sweeping the savannah. He raised a hand, a silent command for Jengo to pull back, his voice, though distant, echoing in Jengo's mind. A wounded lion, Jengo, is a vengeful spirit. It brings only death to our homes. Do not interfere with what is not yours to heal." Jengo ignored him. His hands trembled, not just from fear, but from the raw, agonizing decision tearing at his conscience. His primal instincts screamed for self-preservation, but his heart, steeped in a lifetime of reverence for the wild, refused to abandon this magnificent creature to an unknown, insidious fate. He stood, pulling a small, well-honed carving knife from his belt, a tool meant for crafting, not for surgery on a beast of this magnitude. He approached the lion again, each step deliberate, the crunch of dry grass beneath his worn sandals amplified in the intense quiet. The lion's massive head, matted with blood and dust, lifted marginally. Its amber eyes, cloudy with pain, met his. There was no fire, no aggression, only a profound, heartbreaking flicker of desperation, a silent plea that pierced Jengo's soul. It was recognition, he realized, not just of his presence, but of his intent. A wave of fear, cold and sharp, washed over him, but he pushed it down. He knelt beside the beast once more, the pungent, coppery smell of blood filling his nostrils. His hands, slick with sweat and now touching the matted fur, moved cautiously around the arrow shaft. The strange bioluminescent etchings seemed to pulse faintly under his touch. From behind him, he heard the shouts of the villagers. Closer now, Mzee Baraka's voice stern and commanding, followed by the clatter of spears. A makeshift thornbush barrier was quickly being erected, marking the villagers' terrified boundary. Jengo focused. He gripped the arrow just above the wound, his fingers brushing against the rough, unnatural residue. With a deep breath, he began to twist, applying slow, agonizing pressure. The lion's body stiffened, a low, guttural growl rumbling deep in its chest before erupting into a raw, tearing roar that echoed across the plains, startling a flock of egrets into the orange sky. Dust erupted around them as the beast struggled, its immense power momentarily threatening to overwhelm Jengo. But its desperate eyes remained locked on his, a silent understanding passing between them. With a final, sickening pop, the arrow tore free. Jengo stumbled back, the blood-soaked shaft clutched in his trembling hand. He quickly examined the arrowhead, his focus intense despite the throbbing in his ears from the lion's cries and the villagers' mounting panic. The crude, almost barbed head was unnaturally heavy. He scraped away a crust of dried blood, and there it was, a minuscule, almost invisible metallic chip embedded deep within the arrowhead's core. It gleamed faintly, reflecting the dying sunlight. This was no ordinary poacher's weapon. This was engineered. The chilling suspicion that had gnawed at him was now a terrifying certainty. What unholy force would craft such a thing, not just to kill, but to inflict prolonged torment, to track? The metallic chip glinted in Jengo's palm, a stark, terrifying anomaly against the familiar dust and blood. Before he could fully process its implications, a low, resonant rumble vibrated through the very ground beneath his feet. It was a sound he knew well, a territorial warning, a declaration of presence. But this time it carried an edge of fury and concern. Distant roars, powerful and deep, answered the wounded lion's earlier cries, echoing across the vast savanna, shaking the encroaching twilight. The villagers behind their hastily erected thornbush barrier gasped, their shouts of anger now replaced by a primal, absolute terror. Spears, previously aimed at Jengo in frustrated warning, now quivered, directed outwards towards the approaching threat. Jengo himself felt a fresh wave of ice-cold dread. The pride. He had inadvertently drawn them here. From the lengthening shadows of the thorny bushes bordering the plains, forms began to materialize. First, a formidable lioness, her golden eyes glowing with fierce intelligence, her muscular body rippling beneath her tawny fur. Then two more, equally powerful, emerging with silent grace. Finally, the true alpha of the pride, a towering male whose mane bristled, framing a face contorted with anger and concern, stepped into view. They formed a menacing semicircle around Jengo and the injured king, a silent, formidable wall of raw power and protective instinct. The scent of wild cat, potent and musky, filled the air. Jengo's heart hammered against his ribs, threatening to burst. Every fiber of his being screamed to flee, to dive behind the flimsy barrier with the terrified villagers, to seek refuge from the inevitable wrath of the pride. Baraka's voice, now a desperate cry, reached him. Jengo, run! They will tear you apart. But Jengo didn't move. He couldn't. With a deliberate, measured movement, he dropped the peculiar blood-stained arrow, with its chilling metallic chip, onto the dusty ground. He then slowly, carefully knelt before the still heaving, injured king, his blood-stained hands open, palms facing upwards, a universal gesture of peace and surrender. His eyes remained fixed on the pride, acknowledging their power, their right to judge. The air thrummed with unbearable tension. The larger male rumbled, a deep warning that seemed to vibrate in Jengo's bones. But it was the formidable lioness who broke the standoff. With a slow, deliberate grace that defied her immense power, she stepped forward. Her flank brushed Jengo's shoulder as she passed him, a terrifying proximity that made his breath catch in his throat. He could feel the warmth of her body, smell her wild essence. She walked directly to her wounded mate, nudging him gently with her nose, emitting a low, comforting purr. The injured lion, still weak, responded with a soft moan. Then the lioness turned her head. Her intelligent gaze, piercing and deep, settled directly on Jengo. It wasn't the instinctive hunger or aggression of a predator. It was a look that defied animal instinct, a profound question in her eyes, a silent, unprecedented assessment. She was weighing him, judging his actions, his intent, his very soul. In that moment of intense, almost human-like scrutiny, Jengo knew his fate lay not with the panicked villagers, but with this powerful creature, in the silent, terrifying judgment of the pride. The pale, watchful eye of the moon replaced the fiery orange of sunset. The air grew cool, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. Jengo, with the pride silently encircling him, became a temporary, fragile part of their world. He worked by the dim moonlight, his hands still trembling, but now with a strange resolve, carefully applying a crude herbal poultice to the lion's wound. The herbs gathered from his small personal medicine kit were known for their antiseptic and pain-relieving properties, traditional remedies passed down through generations. The pride watched, not with aggression, but with a palpable, organized patience that defied simple animal instinct. The lioness, whose gaze had held him captive earlier, lay observing him intently. Most astonishingly, the great male, the alpha, allowed Jengo to approach his injured mate without a single growl. His golden eyes, luminous in the moonlight, burned with an intelligence that both chilled and amazed Jengo, conveying a profound trust, an unspoken understanding. Jengo could feel the immense power radiating from the male, yet it was tempered by a strange, almost human restraint. Throughout the long, tense night, Jengo tended the wound, periodically checking the lion's breathing, whispering soft, unintelligible words of comfort. The villagers, huddled in terrified silence behind their thornbush barrier, slowly dispersed as the night deepened, leaving only Baraka, a solitary, grim silhouette, observing from a distance. As the first faint streaks of pale gold and deep indigo began to paint the eastern sky, signaling the imminent dawn, Jengo felt a stir beside him. Against all odds, the wounded lion, though still favoring its shoulder, slowly pushed itself up onto shaky legs. A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the Priya, a silent cheer. They encircled their king, nudging him gently, a profound display of unity and recovery. Jengo, weary but awestruck, remained kneeling, watching this miraculous resurrection. The pride began to shift, preparing to move, to melt back into the vastness of the savannah as the sun prepared to cast its full glory. But before they left, the recovered lion, his eyes still holding that incredible depth of awareness, turned towards Jengo. With a specific, deliberate nudge of its powerful nose, it pushed something towards him on the dusty ground. It was the fragmented arrowhead, the one Jengo had dropped earlier. A shiver ran down Jengo's spine. This was not a random act. It was a conscious, intentional communication. He picked up the fragment, his fingers brushing against the still-present bioluminescent residue. Under the strengthening light of dawn, he scrutinized the metallic chip embedded within the crude arrowhead. It was minuscule, almost invisible to the naked eye. He squinted, holding it closer, turning it to catch the light. And there it was, a tiny, almost imperceptible corporate logo, intricately etched onto the metallic surface. It was stylized, elegant, yet utterly out of place in this well-known, untamed land. A chilling wave washed over Jengo. This was no mere poacher's bullet, no desperate hunter's arrow. This was a biomarker, a sophisticated classified technology, a clear signature of a hidden organization. This wasn't about meat or trophies. This was about something far larger, far more insidious than he could have imagined. A danger that extended beyond the savannah, beyond his village, hinting at a powerful, technologically advanced threat operating in the shadows, using the wild as their testing ground. If you thought Jengo's journey couldn't get more dangerous, prepare yourselves. The truth he's about to uncover will send shivers down your spine, revealing a conspiracy far grander and more terrifying than anyone could imagine. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to unravel this dark secret with us, because what Jengo witnesses next will change everything. The dawn broke over the savannah, painting the sky in soft, pale golds and indigos. But Jengo's mind was far from serene. Clutched in his hand, the arrowhead fragment with its tiny, insidious corporate logo felt like a burning coal, branding a terrifying question into his soul. The pride, having accepted him as one of their own, began to move, but not back to their familiar hunting grounds. Instead, the alpha male, occasionally glancing back, led them deeper, towards the forbidding expanse of the Outerlands, a wild, uncharted territory shunned by villagers and guides alike due to its treacherous terrain and dangerous, unpredictable wildlife. Jengo, though exhausted, had no choice but to follow. The lion's unprecedented gratitude was not expressed in words, but in a series of intricate movements and vocalizations. A nudge from the lioness, a low rumble from the male, a shift in their collective direction, each seemed to guide Jengo, not just through the landscape, but towards a specific, hidden destination. His tattered guide clothing, now stained with blood and dust, felt like a second skin as he navigated the increasingly dense scrub. The journey was fraught with peril. The Outerlands lived up to its reputation. Hidden snares, crudely fashioned from braided wire and concealed beneath dry leaves, littered certain paths. Traps not for large game, but for smaller, more elusive creatures. The pride, however, seemed to possess an uncanny awareness, veering away from these dangers, sometimes even nudging Jengo to take a different route. They led him through thorny thickets and across treacherous, rocky outcrops, their powerful forms moving with an unspoken protectiveness that both humbled and terrified him. More disturbing were the signs of unnatural ecological damage. Patches of earth lay barren and scorched, not by wildfire, but by some unseen chemical blight. Trees stood stunted and twisted, their leaves unnaturally pale, as if sapped of life force by an invisible hand. This wasn't the natural cycle of the savannah. This was a deliberate desecration, a chilling testament to the threat he now sought. Finally, as dusk once again began to cast long shadows, the pride slowed, their movements becoming stealthier, more cautious. Through a dense thicket of gnarled acacia, Jengo caught sight of it, a camouflage structure, almost seamlessly blending into the rocky landscape. It was a heavily guarded compound, far too complex for a mere ecological outpost. A faint, unnatural blue light pulsed from within, in eerie contrast to the deep indigo of twilight. Creeping closer, guided by the silent, watchful lioness who stood protectively beside him, Jengo peered through the perimeter fence. It was an electric fence, he noted, shimmering faintly, humming with suppressed power. Beyond it, a sterile world unfolded. Scientists in crisp, sterile suits moved with deliberate precision within well-lit laboratories. Jengo's breath hitched as he watched them handle strange bioluminescent animal samples, glowing vials and what looked like dissection trays. The glow was identical to the residue on the arrowhead. His stomach churned. Then his eyes caught a glimpse of discarded equipment stacked near a service entrance, empty crates, broken testing devices. On one, unmistakable, was the same insidious corporate logo etched onto the arrowhead fragment in his pocket. The chilling realization slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just poaching. This was a sophisticated, systematic operation. Unethical genetic manipulation, bioweaponry, a terrifying scientific experiment, all possibly targeting the very wildlife he cherished. The pride had led him to the heart of a dark, hidden truth, a truth so profound and dangerous that merely witnessing it put his life in immediate, extreme peril. The rhythmic hum of the electric fence, coupled with the unnatural blue glow from the corporate facility, created a sickening symphony in the deep twilight. Jengo, pressing himself deeper into the dense foliage, watched with growing horror as scientists in sterile suits moved among glowing animal samples. The logo on the discarded equipment confirmed his darkest fears. This was a place of unethical experimentation, a classified incident unfolding right here in the heart of the Outerlands. He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out his ancient, beat-up camera, snapping a few shaky but crucial photos of the logo and the strange, glowing samples. This was irrefutable evidence. A sudden snap of a twig nearby, then another, louder crunch shattered the tense quiet. Jengo froze. He had been so focused on the compound he'd failed to notice the approach of another threat. His presence was discovered. From the shadows, a group of figures emerged, not the scientists, but armed corporate security forces. Dressed in dark tactical gear, their faces obscured by helmets, they moved with a ruthless efficiency that bespoke extensive training. Flashlights cut through the darkness, sweeping the dense scrub. "There!" a guttural voice barked, pinpointing Jengo's location. Jengo found himself cornered, the vastness of the conspiracy weighing heavily on him, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He scrambled backward, clutching the camera, but the thick undergrowth hindered his escape. The security forces, wielding what looked like tranquilizer rifles, closed in, intent on silencing him, on burying the truth he had stumbled upon. A chilling metallic click echoed as one of the guards cocked his weapon. But before they could apprehend him, before he could fully register the desperate fear gnawing at him, the savannah erupted. It wasn't a chaotic scramble. It was an astonishing, organized precision. The entire lion pride, which had been silently shadowing him, protecting him, unleashed a coordinated attack. The great male, a primal roar tearing from his throat, charged first not at the security forces to kill, but to incapacitate and intimidate. He slammed into the lead guard, sending him sprawling, his rifle skittering into the dust. The lioness followed, her movements a blur of tawny fur, darting past another guard, raking her claws across his tactical vest. A warning, not a death blow. Two more lions joined, circling, cutting off escape routes, their roars echoing through the pre-dawn darkness, a deafening symphony of nature's fury. This was not a mindless assault. This was a strategic, defensive maneuver. The lions were disabling, disorienting, driving back the human forces, creating a precise escape route for Jengo. The guards, momentarily stunned by the sheer ferocity and unexpected intelligence of the attack, stumbled, shouted, and began a disorganized retreat, firing wildly into the air in a desperate attempt to scare off the predators. "Go!" a primal instinct screamed at Jengo. He scrambled through the dense undergrowth, clutching his camera, the digital proof of the corporation's classified incident. Now his most precious cargo, he risked a glance back. The lion stood firm, a living wall of muscle and intelligence, guarding the wild against the encroaching greed of humanity. Their golden eyes, reflecting the chaotic flashes of orangism from the security forces' retreating lights, burned with an unspoken understanding. This forbidden alliance, forged in desperation, a shocking testament to nature's response to human encroachment, had saved his life. As he plunged deeper into the wilderness, the roars fading behind him, Jengo carried not just the evidence, but a profound understanding. This was more than a conspiracy. It was a revelation that could reshape humanity's view of the wild forever. The animals were not just prey or subjects. They were sentient beings, capable of judgment, of alliance, of exacting nature's own form of revenge against those who sought to corrupt it. He had a story to tell, a truth to expose, a monumental reckoning for a world oblivious to the intelligence and power that lay dormant in the heart of the wild. The dusty path Jengo had once walked as a simple safari guide now stretched before him, a highway of uncertainty and peril. He carried the weight of the savannah's untold secrets, the grainy images on his camera, a silent scream against the hubris of mankind. The corporation, with its cold, sterile ambition, had dared to tamper with the very essence of life, awakening an intelligence in the wild far beyond their comprehension. Jengo's initial act of compassion for a fallen king had forged an unbreakable bond, revealing a profound conspiracy that threatened to unravel the delicate balance of existence. The lions, once mere beasts of the wild, had shown him an organized defiance, a collective intelligence that shattered every preconceived notion. Their forbidden alliance was a testament to nature's profound resilience and its capacity for an astonishing, almost human-like response to violation. Now, Jengo faced a new, even greater challenge: how to expose this hidden truth to a world that might not be ready to believe it, a world too comfortable in its dominion over nature. The fight had only just begun, and the stakes were nothing less than the future of the wild, and perhaps humanity's own soul.